Sure, you've lit an interview before and wondered, man, I wish I could do that every time. This is where having a repeatable system is important as a creative, one that still has structure and flexibility. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the 10-step process that you can take every time you approach your interview lighting to ensure that you're getting the best shot possible, so that you have a system of knowing where to start and where to end. And you can download this process as a free PDF that we have down below. I'll put a link in the description, and take this every time you're on set so you're never lost about what's the next step you should be taking. These are all part of the Art of Documentary Academy, but more on AOD later, and I'll be talking about a special deal we have coming up. So let's jump into this. The very first step before you take a camera out or anything is know where west is. And this matters to any cinematographer in the world because no matter where you are, the sun sets in the west. This is where your light will be ending up. Now, if you're in the northern hemisphere, your northern windows in a room are the ones that won't ever receive direct light. So this might be something you want to have to play to your advantage because the light will ambiently come in through that window rather than come in burnt like in the south window where the sun will be moving through most of the day. Where if you're in the southern hemisphere, the south window sometimes can be more useful to work with because this is where the sun will be ambiently again spilling through and not directly coming in. If you're fighting direct sunlight, sometimes this can be challenging for interviews. There's great apps like Sunseeker, Shadow Map. There's a variety. I think Helios might even be one of them, just to be able to know where the sun is. Or you can even just pick up Google Maps. And when you open the map by default, it should be pointing north. Northwest. We got like a 1 hour window. 2 p.m. it's going to just start slicing through this. This is the key with Sunseeker is if you crouch down, you can start to see at 2, that little dot there. This is when the sun is going to start peeking through right through here. Your job as a cinematographer is to make a plan. Are we going to work with the sun or are we going to have to fight against it? Next is you want to determine what you can and cannot control. Can you control the skylights in a room? Can you turn off the lights? What I like to do is to shut all the windows and shut off all the lights and then slowly add back in the practical lights in that environment to see what they're doing. I want to know what full control I have. That can even come down to air conditioning and vents or if there are people walking in the background. So try and determine how much of a blank slate you can start with. We've all been there on a corporate shoot when someone says, hey, come shoot in my office, but the lights are attached to the entire floor, so you won't be able to control those. If you do know this ahead of time though, you'll know that you can black those out. Be careful, don't always put gaffer tape on those pot lights. They can set on fire. I've seen a cinematographer do that before. Next is you want to define your motivation. And to be honest, this is probably the decision that impacts where I'm going to place the camera most. I like my interview lighting to feel naturally motivated. I want my films to be steeped in reality, and I don't like them feeling like they were shot in a studio. Okay, so here's what I'm navigating in this room. Is the only real window is this skylight, which is an odd motivation. Usually the best place if we want our interview to look normal in this office is this space. We have this window, and we can keep this in the shot just off to the side to make that feel naturally motivated. So when you walk into the room, ask where is the light naturally coming from? And that can be lamps. You can go for a tungsten look on your subject's face. But for us, we went to this back office there. You can even see that light pooling in from right now. Felt like a big natural source. And that gave me the opportunity to use a big natural modifier as my main key light. Now, the trick with your framing, if you really want to get detailed with this, is do you show a little bit of the window so people understand the space and can recognize, hey, there's windows on that side of the room. That's where the light's coming from. Once I define the motivation, now I'm trying to pick my frame. Do I want to show this peekaboo of the window? I like showing a little sliver of the window so we understand where our motivation's coming from. But I also really like this corner here. I will do both. We'll option both. We'll see what we like in the end. And ultimately, I decided with showing a bit of the window because the background felt a little simpler and felt like I had a little more control of how to work with that rather than having that bookshelf that had all those objects on there and a lot of bokeh. Sometimes too much detail in the background is distracting. Now, sometimes people say lock your shot as the next step, but I actually like to pick my modifier because I find depending on how big or how much shape I'm adding to my character's face, that will depend where I place them in the room. So my next step is I set up my biggest light, and that's my key light, and I begin to find where I want to place my subject in relation to that, depending on what kind of contrast ratio I want to have on their face. Do I want to have it fully flat on their face, where the light's just all hitting the side, or do I want to go super moody like this, where only half my face is lit? I like to decide then too, what is the quality of this light? Is it going to be a hard shadow? Is it going to be a softer, more diffused light? This is where you want to determine what modifier you want to be using. To me, is a little bit based on the motivation. If you have a window with hard light or coming through in the background, you're likely going to want to emulate that with your key light, so it doesn't just suddenly feel like, why is this light soft? But if you have shears on the window, then this could motivate your light to being soft. You want to think about the quality of light hitting your character's face if you're trying to go for a more realistic look, so that it doesn't just feel like, in this case, that you're using a giant softbox, because not all light is equal. So once I have my main modifier and I have that set up, that's when I begin to finesse and decide where to place my subject, which would be step number 5. Locking your shot. This doesn't mean you can't make tweaks to it, because I always will make adjustments, but I now like to begin to decide, okay, here is where my main subject is going to go. And blocking the subject also depends where and how deep you're going to put them in the room. In this case, I put Kim halfway through the room, and it meant we actually had to move some of the couches. This comes back to our second step of, do we have control of this room? Can we move these objects? We moved this so that I had enough depth between Kim and the background. Typically, when I shoot interviews, my subject is never closer to the background than they are to the camera. It's usually a 3-to-1 ratio, that the distance from where they are to the background is 3 times as much as they are to the camera. That's a general rule. It really depends the house, depends where we're shooting. You can see these interviews that we quickly set up this last week in Las Vegas for the C-Bum film. All of those shots, my subject was either in the middle of the room or we were close to a wall, and we had the full depth of the room to work with. And as mentioned, all these steps are listed in our free downloadable PDF. We have tons of different guides like this available to download. I'll put a few more down below in the link. These are all part of the Art of Documentary Academy. And Art of Documentary is an academy that's had thousands of filmmakers come through it. Some of them releasing their very first films, and others releasing masterpieces that they've been working on for years. It's been so incredible. Our students are surpassing us in what they're doing, winning Emmys and getting tons of awards. One of our students has just gone up to Mount Everest, and he was able to do that project because of different connections in Art of Documentary. All of our content, courses, communities, and monthly calls will help you hone in on your craft of being a true filmmaker. And this Black Friday is your chance to join AOD. We're having a 40% sale off on all of our courses across the board. This is the best sale possible for our individual courses. And if you want to guarantee your spot, then join our early registration happening November 12th. And if you get onto this list, you'll also get an additional 10% off the course. This is 50% off an AOD course. We've never done a sale this big. We have 7 courses and hundreds of teaching videos that will help you become a better storyteller. Ultimately, anyone can learn lighting, but can you find a story and direct it at your best potential? Well, that's exactly what will help you do in AOD. So hope to see you on the inside of AOD this Black Friday. Kim, this is going on YouTube.
Hey, what's up? Go follow my cat on Instagram.
You have your cat on Instagram?
Yeah,
what
his name's Logan Duty.
Next is lensing. You might think that you would want to choose a lens before you block your subject, but I find it's much easier once you have the whole space set up to determine how far you need to place your camera from the subject. It's more challenging to move a light at a person and all the objects in the room than it is just to swap a lens and move the camera in and out. So I typically like to light, block, and then really decide what lens I want, although I'm usually framing up on a 35mm. Why this is something like a 50mm or an 85, it just hides too much of the background. I like to be on something a little wider. A 25 or 24mm is maybe showing a bit too much of the room, although I do like shooting my interviews sometimes with this, just getting real up close. Right now I'm on a 24mm, but typically I find the best lens for you to set up an interview is a 35mm. And another reason is if you're able to frame up on a 35mm with your main key lighting and your mics and your negative fill, then any other lens after that is going to work because it's going to frame out those things. Where if you start on a really tight lens, you may be running into problems if you need a second angle and you need to then widen out on your main shot so your main shot and your second angle don't look identical. Also too, this was my first time using my Arles Prime lenses. I think I'm pronouncing that right. These are from Dizio. They're VistaVision Primes that have T1.4 through the whole set. Beautiful lenses, very sharp. I had them wide open and they still look beautiful. I'm looking forward to trying these out more. If you want me to do a bit more of an in-depth look at them, let me know below. Coming through, big giant office. Actually, it's a 1-bedroom apartment.
Hashtag blessed.
Once I've kind of finessed all this in, this is where I like to begin to pick my contrast ratios. This is where now I'll play with my aperture, my ND filters, and the brightness of my key light to begin to determine how much I want on the face. You can always jack up your key light to 100%. This just means you have to reduce your exposure. So in turn, you're gonna have a higher contrast level because the rest of the ambient light won't be equal to your main key light. This is where I like to use my waveform and my false colors. I'm flicking it on and I'm looking at the shadow side of my character's face to the key side of the face. And don't let anyone tell you that you have to light at 60 IRE or 40 IRE or 75 IRE, which that's a little bit too much if you're doing 75 IRE. I have said this in the past, typically your camera's color science and sensor does like skin tones closer to 60 IRE, but tons of high-level Hollywood DPs these days are shooting as low as 35 IRE or even lower in some cases for their character's face. It depends the mood, the aesthetic, and the motivation that you're going for. But for me, I like a higher contrast ratio. I like shadows. A lot of you complain about that. But I prefer dark black. So for my interview as well, I like to have that higher contrast ratio on my character's face. So in this case, when I was shooting with Kim, I think I was down at a 20% output on my nan light, and I pushed that up to about 35%, I believe. And that gave me a higher contrast ratio as I brought down the exposure. And it also helped me equal the exposure of the light coming in through the window. Now that we have the light positioned properly, our character in the right place, both our camera and the lensing chosen to be a bit better. And in this case, I decided to swap to the 50 from the 35, and I moved my camera back a bit so that I wasn't just completely cropped in. I do like wider interviews. It also gives people space, like me right now, to move their hands as they talk. But from there, that's when I do the background tweaks. I don't really worry about the background too early. I want to perfect my character's face because moving stuff around the background is really quite easy. And this is where it's kind of a game of, is this too close? Is this too far? Does this feel too forced? Does this feel too natural? Are we too sparse? Are we too busy? You can play around with this all day. What I actually recommend is recording and playing it back. There's something about watching footage back that you're more analytical. I don't know what that's about. It happens to us as cinematographers. Everything you're shooting, watching live feels amazing, but then you play it back and you're like, wow, that's shaky, or that was out of focus, or why didn't I hold that shot? Same is true, I find, for interviews. I like to hit playback. I like to watch it as though I'm in my edit suite, and I'll begin to analyze the image a lot more. I think I give myself grace to look around the frame. Okay, the last two, I want to push that speaker over a bit, and I do feel like I'm a little bit dark over there. I don't mind it, though. What we can just do is bring in a practical. Bring in a practical! So we moved a bunch of stuff around here for Kim on this background. I had enough light on those wood panels to give her a bit of backlighting. I typically don't backlight my interviews these days. It's been something I've moved away for a while. If I am, it's usually light down at like 5%. I find the second you add strong backlighting, it just feels like a lit studio interview, and it feels like it's from a different era. What I typically do is add a little more light onto the background, which you could see us doing here by adding these lamps and allowing some of the window to spill onto the background so that we could still have separation from Kim's head and the background. Here's the key to any practical light you have in a studio, or just go into Amazon and buy a bunch of these dimmers. Every light in our office is run through a dimmer. It's not always great when you have LED bulbs, but if you can get dimmable LED bulbs like we have in here, then you can tweak the lighting. But let's see what this practical looks like. The last thing I'll do is tweak my exposure and actually set the white balance. Sometimes I'll do that earlier. In this case, I was at 4,300. I kind of like to set up my shots at 43 sometimes, depending if I'm not going for a day for night look. 43 allows me to see all the color temperatures kind of equal, but knowing that I'm going to be moving towards about a 5,000, 5,500, that range usually for my interviews, because I like balancing to daylight. And this is where then you can begin to tweak that on your lights and the other sources in the room as well. You may like to tweak color balance earlier. I typically leave it till the end. I like to look at contrast ratios, framing, and also the composition overall. And then the color tweaking is very simple and something I can literally dial in right at the end. And now lastly, this is very important. This is the stress test. Have your subject move around. Have them lean forward. You may find last minute that there is a shot that you want to try differently. When they lean forward, oh wow, look at this. I like this better than when they're back here. This feels different. So have them move around. You also are looking for things of, do they lean off camera? I find sometimes my subjects, I'll have the lead space in the shot, but then as the interview goes on, they'll lean forward and then suddenly I'm short-siding it. I have all this negative space over here and they're talking to the edge of frame. I find hitting record and playing back again is a great way to stress test, because you're going to be watching it as though you had actually already shot this. I hope these tips helped. If you like lighting guides, if you like tips, if you like knowing how to build the best interview possible, we have dozens and dozens of videos teaching this in Art of Documentary, and we have hundreds of videos talking about what's most important with your shooting, and that's storytelling, perfecting the craft of being a good documentary filmmaker. That's all part of the Art of Documentary, and as mentioned, that is going on sale for Black Friday. This is the best deal, the best sale we've ever given out, so this is your chance to join. It'll be for only a few days. So download that PDF. You can get on our waitlist as well to make sure that you don't miss out. There is limited seating for Art of Documentary, and so this Black Friday sale will be moving very quickly. Thank you guys for watching this. This video may not age well because I recorded it day one of the World Series, but depending what happens, go Jays. And if they didn't win, throw a bat. See you on the next one.